So with 8.5, we're going to learn the properties of how to condense and expand logarithms. So this is going to help whenever you see a question that says simplify. So we'll be condensing and expanding. So if you have two terms or more than two, and they are different variables, so if you had a coefficient and three variables all side by side, and they were all multiplied by each other, then you could separate them by adding. So if they all had the same base and they were inside one logarithm, you could separate them by adding them together. So if they're multiplied, then you add. If one is divided by another, then you subtract. We already talked about this in the last section, but here it is again. If you have a power, so if you have a log to a power, then that power jumps out in front and it becomes r times log of m. These are the two that you saw in the homework last time in 8.4. These are just the properties. Same thing, if you have a power, it jumps out in front, and then when the base is the same as the number next to it, that becomes 1. So your answer would just simplify to whatever the power is. And it works the opposite as well. So if you have a base raised to a log, this also cancels to become 1, and you're left with n. So I think on the homework it was like 7 log base 7 of x plus 3, or something like that. And your answer was just x plus 3. So no matter which way it is written, whether the log is on the bottom or the base is on the bottom, and it's in exponential form, it just ends up being your power. 3 things: anytime you have a log of 1, it's always 0. Also, that is true for natural log of 1. That's what ln is. It's called the natural log. And if your base matches the number inside the log, then it becomes 1. Something to mention before we start, like with the expanding, is it's really easy to detect the multiplying ones because they're always adding. But when you divide, you have some that are adding and some that are subtracting always. So if it is on the numerator, then you get a plus sign in front, and this will make more sense here in a minute. If it's on the denominator, then it gets a minus sign in front. That will make more sense here in a minute once we start combining. So for number 1, we have 3 separate variables. So we're going to expand it into 3 separate logs. And we also have some powers that go out in front. So you can either do this in one step, but I'm going to show you the 2-step process first. I think it'll become so routine that you'll do it in one. But I'm going to split it into 3. So log of x squared. Would they be plus or minuses? Plus. So log of y plus log of z cubed. But I'm not completely finished because I don't want to leave any powers in my final answer. So what do I do with those powers? Yeah, put them in front. So my final answer would be 2 log x plus log y plus 3 log z. So for number 2, You have log of x minus 2 log of y. And don't forget to write in the base. Okay, try number 3. So number 3, that's why I said in like what sign goes in front determines if it's on the numerator or the denominator, because 5 and x cubed are both on the top, they're in the numerator, so they both have a plus in front, or they're positive. So you would say 5 plus x, or 3 log 6x, and then the y is on the denominator, so that there is a minus sign in front. Okay, try number 4. I think that the biggest mistake I see people make is that they forget to separate the coefficient from the variable next to it. So some people put like ln of 2a, but just remember that the number is separated from each variable. So the 2 is separate from the a, is separate from the b, separate from the c. With number 5, you do have to do some distributing first, so you do need to simplify the inside before you expand it. And so what would I do with this power of 2? Multiply it. Does it just go to the top, or does it go to the top and the bottom? Top and bottom. So I'm going to rewrite this as log base 2 of x to the 6th over y squared. Okay, now try expanding it from there. Okay, so if we look at number 6, inside the parentheses we have x plus y. And if we look at our rules, we only see multiplication and division. Like we only see when they're multiplied by each other, and we only see when they're divided by each other. There's nothing in there that talks about x plus y. So you cannot separate this if there is a plus sign inside your log. So it is already as simplified as it can be. So it can't expand. You can't write it as log of a plus log of y, or log of x plus log of y, because of this plus sign in the middle. So the only time you can expand, so you can only expand when multiplied or divided. So when the variables are multiplied by each other or they're divided. I guess put a D on the end. Okay, for 7 through 10, we're just going to do the opposite. So my only suggestion for this is, because you have to determine what goes on the numerator and what goes on the denominator, always look for the sign in front. So look at sign in front to determine numerator or denominator. So if there's a plus sign in front of it, or if it's positive, gets the numerator. If there's a minus sign in front, then it goes to the denominator. So looking at number 7, also you have to, when you're going backwards, if there's a coefficient in front, like this 2, it goes up to be x squared. So I'm going to write this as natural log of 6x squared divided by y cubed. So the y cubed goes on the bottom, and it's a y cubed because there's a 3 in front. So the 2 and the 3 go up. And the y cubed goes on the bottom because there is a minus in front of it. The x squared goes on the top because there is a plus in front of it. So try doing number 8. So for number 8, c to the 5th and m both go on the denominator because why? Yeah, they both have this negative in front, so they both go to the bottom. And a cubed stays on the top. Okay, try number 9. So for number 9, the 5 went on the bottom because there was a negative sign in front, or a minus. And the x cubed went on the top. For number 10, it was 2 to the 4th. R cubed goes on the bottom because of the minus. And s stays on the top. Then I simplified this 2 to the 4th to be 16. So once you condense it, if you can do any simplifying, then do that. You want it in its simplest form. So I'm going to just write a note, simplify if necessary, or simplify if possible. You may not think it's necessary, but it could be possible. Okay, so simplifying, just using the properties again. So if the log does not have a base, what do we assume? It's 10. And our property tells us 10 to the log of 10 becomes 1. So I'm left with 3x. Now there are 2 ways that you could do number 12. I'm going to show you both. And you can use whichever one that you prefer, but there are 2 ways. So the first one is take this x, move it out front, so it becomes x log 525. And we can evaluate this because what power do I need to raise 5 to get to 25? 2. So this just becomes 2. So my final answer would be 2x. Another thing that I could do is I could rewrite this as, I'm going to do it over here. I could rewrite this as log base 5 of 5 squared to the x. So all I did is I replaced this 25 with 5 squared, which then becomes 5 to the 2x. This cancels, and I'm left with 2x. Either one works. I think I prefer the first way, but you may not be like me, so that is okay. So try doing, let's see, try doing 13 and 14. So 13 through 16, or I guess 13, 14, 15, you're just looking at the power. And 16 is undefined because of y, the negative 3. So you can't have a negative inside a log. You also can't have a negative what? You can have a negative exponent. You can't have a negative base. So the 2 things like on the left side of the equation cannot be negative. If it said equals negative 3, and then this were positive, then that would be okay. So the right hand side can be negative, but the left hand side cannot. So 10 to the 3rd power is 1,000. If you're going from big to small, remember it's always going to be a fraction. So if you're going from big to small, then that tells you, like if you're going from 36 to 6, it's going to be a fraction because the square root of 36 is 6. If you're going from fraction to number or number to fraction, then it's always going to be negative. So if you've got some sort of fraction, then that tells you that it's going to be a negative answer. Because to get that 1/3 to be 3, it has to be a negative exponent, and then 3 cubed is 27. 5 to the 4th power, 21, the 8's cancel. with 22, a little different. What I did is I changed this 4 to be 2 squared, because you can do log base 8 of 2, but you can't do log base 8 of 4. And so that 2 comes out in front, and it becomes 2 log base 8 of 2. And from there, 8 to the 1/3 power, the cube root. So 2 times 1/3 gives me 2/3. And what did you guys say that y'all did? So 8 to the x power equals 4. And then change the bases to be like 2 to the 3x equals 2 squared. 3x equals 2, so x equals 2. I like that way too. That might make more sense to y'all. 14 squared is 196, is that right? Okay. And then 3's canceled, 243. Anytime you have log of 1, it always equals 0. Always.